Welcome to the Steering Change Podcast, navigating through the commercial transportation industry in Alberta and beyond, powered by the Alberta Motor Transport Association. Here's your host, Kelsey Hipkin.
Hello, listeners of Steering Change. 'Tis I, your host, Kelsey Hipkin. Let's talk mental health. Even when it's not top of mind, it's part of how we think, react, communicate, and perform. In today's workplace, psychological safety has become just as important as physical safety. It means creating a work environment where people are free from psychological harm or the threat of harm that can negatively affect their mental well-being. In the transportation industry, this is an area that's receiving increasing attention. Back in 2022, AMTA's Dave Elniski developed a guide titled Psychosocial Hazard Control in Alberta's Trucking Industry, a guide to improving psychological safety for small and medium-sized carriers. The guide highlights the psychological hazards that should be addressed through safety management systems and explains why carriers can't afford to overlook them. Beyond meeting federal and provincial requirements, organizations that actively manage these risks are better positioned to support their workers, strengthen safety culture, and remain competitive in a changing industry. While trucking safety professionals have long experienced managing physical hazards, psychological safety is still a newer frontier, and industry-specific resources remain limited. That's why guides like this, and conversations like today, are so important. Joining us for this episode is Kris Marks from Vive Mental Health. At Vive, the mission is simple but powerful, to ensure everyone has access to inclusive, effective mental health support while helping build communities and workplaces founded on dignity, respect, collaboration, and equitable support. Many of you may have seen Kris at our Medicine Hat Safety Summit this past May, and he'll be back with us at the Whitecourt Safety Summit taking place on September 30th. Kris is going to be presenting Intersections, Merging Psychological and Physical Safety in the Transportation Industry. It was very well received in Medicine Hat, so we hope you can join us in Whitecourt. And that leads to today's episode where we're going to dig deeper into the connection between mental health and workplace safety, explore what psychological safety really looks like in practice, and discuss what employers and workers can do to create healthier, safer workplaces. Kris, welcome back to the Steering Change Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
As always, let's start with just telling us a bit about yourself and the work that you do with Vive.
Sure. Full name is Kristopher Marks. I started Vive 5 years ago, actually, in June, which is when this was being recorded. So we're celebrating our 5-year anniversary. And we support workplaces, communities, and classrooms in the mental health space. So it's kind of nice to have that variety and how they're all intertwined. So we talk a lot about psychological safety and mental health in the workplace, through training and keynotes and strategy and things like that. And we do a lot of community work and a lot of classroom work as well. We have a music program. You can see the guitars behind me. It's called Instrumental Health, which is my dream program. I love doing that. But we have our hands in a lot of different spaces, supporting workplaces, communities, and classrooms.
Now, Kris, you have been on our podcast before talking about a similar topic through our friend Doug Walton. But as you know, mental health, psychological health, it's constantly evolving. We're constantly learning more in that kind of realm. So can you kind of start with what does psychological safety actually mean in the context of not just commercial transportation, but the workplace in general?
For sure. Yeah, it's great to be back on your podcast. I actually use your podcast as an example of ways that workplaces and associations can support their members. So great
Thank
job.
you.
Start off by pumping your tires.
Please do.
I love it. It's super accessible. You can have these conversations kind of anywhere. So psychological safety refers to just the state of someone who feels safe enough in the workplace to speak up, to be their authentic selves, to make mistakes without fear of retribution. They can go to work to learn, to try, to grow. And that language is actually legislated. You'll find psychological safety in federal and provincial legislation. So that promotes workplaces to create an environment where people can be like that, be themselves, and just feel safe working physically, safe working psychologically and mentally and emotionally.
And speaking of that kind of realm, feeling safe, whether psychologically or physically, why is mental health in transportation specifically often overlooked when compared to that physical safety?
That's a great question. I don't want to caveat it too hard by saying it's not just the transportation industry, but
Mhm.
if we're being specific, and so I'm not a trucker. I'm a former tradesman. I guess you're always a tradesman. Once you are, you always are. But I worked in the trades for 13 years, and I drove I drove around the province a lot and with my work. But I think one of the things that gets maybe taken for granted is that in transportation, if you are a driver, um, you're worried about the payload, you're worried about the other folks on the road. And I think there's a bit of a trope that, driving is kind of, it's the easy part.
Mhm.
Um, so there's not a lot of context given to all the different mental stressors that go into being a driver or being in and around logistics and transportation, and sort of what the mental payload can be like and how that impacts us. So I think that stigma exists for sure in transportation. It certainly does in other industries. And when I started Vive 5 years ago, mental health was really not on anybody's radar, many companies' radar, when it came to workplace, like supporting their people. DEI was kind of the big thing at the time, and accessibility, and we were just coming out of COVID. So I'm really heartened that mental health has moved to the forefront. I think we have more information out there than ever. People are more
Mhm.
self-aware and educated than ever. So we all have mental health. We exist with it outside of work, at work. Every time a driver gets in the truck, they have that mental payload from whatever they were doing prior or they're worried about. So it's yeah, it's easy to overlook because it's not tangible, right? It's not like a
Mhm.
harness or safety glasses you can put on.
So let's dig into that piece a little deeper. You mentioned back when you were in the trades, you were driving across the province a lot, whether a big
Hmm.
rig or just a company car, right? It's a lot of long hours. It's kind of you and yourself with the radio or
Yeah.
what have you. Podcasts like Steering Change, we'll throw in a little one of
Yes.
those. But what are some of the unique psychological stressors faced by those drivers? And I mean, this can expand to dispatchers, et cetera, who are also working in the field.
Yep, for sure. I think isolation would be the number one psychosocial factor, we'll call it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, working in isolation gives you a lot of time to be in your own head, and everybody knows what it's like to spend a lot of time alone with something on your mind. So in the transportation industry, psychological safety is tied to physical safety. You have to be vigilant. You have to be aware you're responsible not just for yourself, but for everybody on the road. As a dispatcher, they're responsible for coordination and putting their people in safe places and getting them organized without too much stress. So it's I think those are pretty unique to the industry, and the culture sort of dictates what that looks like too. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
um, psychological safety and mental health, they're used interchangeably sometimes, but I guess the separation between the two is that mental health is just inherent, and along with isolation, you have deadlines, you have long hours, trying to stay awake, trying to, public facing work is its own can of worms, right?
Yeah.
And so you're always, facing the public, you're facing a lot of scrutiny. When truckers end up in the news, it's not usually because they got there safely or they,
Mm-hmm.
had a great normal day. And um, I'm a front facing guy, like in my work and with my company, and being exposed all the time, like there's a vigilance that comes with that. You kind of have there's optics to manage, and it accumulates. I don't think it's just one stressor that stands out, but between isolation and the long hours and just having to maintain safety on all these in this Venn diagram between emotional, psychological, and physical, it adds up.
Thanks, Kris. And you had touched on culture just then. Sticking with that kind of world with transportation culture. And I mean, I don't even think you can limit it to transportation. It can be something that one sees regardless of the sector that they're working on. There tends to be that like toughness, independence,
Yep.
productivity pressures that you just mentioned. Um, how can all of the above affect mental health outcomes?
I love that question. Um, I'm going to talk about resilience first and kind of work backwards into
Yeah,
those
absolutely.
into that space. So um, I'll preface it by saying like I wasn't always a mental health guy. Like I wasn't raised. I was raised, to have resilience, to be tough, to plow through, to kind of like test your limit of mental fortitude. And I grew up playing a lot of sports and hockey and in the trades, like these were male dominated trades. So you're peacocking a little bit and you're trying to fit in and do good work. And plus you're proud, right? So
Hmm.
I think we put a lot of onus on being resilient. And I'm a musician too. I wrote a song recently called Strong and Silent, and it just talks about that trope of, there's a social expectation too, that, being tough, that's what a good leader is, and being stoic, that's what a
Hmm.
good leader looks like, a strong man, or person or whoever. So it's, the people that I look up to, and I consider myself a pretty resilient guy. I've lived quite a life. I've been through lots, and everybody's got stories, hard things that you've overcome. But it's all relative. So I can push through some really hard things that might seem pretty straightforward, pretty easy for someone else, and vice versa. And it's important to remember that, like, we can't really measure our mental fortitude against anyone else. If it's tough for you, if it's a tough day for you, that's 100% real. That's facts. So there's no sense in trying to measure yourself against what we've been told, toughness and resilience should be.
Hmm.
As far as workplace cultures go, it's a lot of it comes down to the environment, like being around healthy resilience, maybe, in male dominated industries, healthy masculinity, what it looks like to have, ethical resilience, ethical toughness, and to be a good person and know your limit, know when to ask for help. And I have a lot of respect for people that, they can get through a lot, but they're well aware of their limits and when to push back, or when you don't have to push through, right? That was a big lesson for me personally, is that I have a lot of resilience. So subconsciously, you kind of want to test it. Like, you can do hard things, you've overcome
Hmm.
lots. And I made my life way harder so many times because there were people who cared about me, wanted to help, offered to help, and I was like, no, I got this.
Hmm.
And I look back and I'm like, why? I could have taken, the help, and it would have been fine. It would have been way easier. So that really shifted my mindset about it too.
I think what you said there is so important, kind of wanting to maintain that hypervigilance, hyper independence, and then taking those tropes and flipping that coin. And I think that's why the work that Vive does is so important in the mental health sector. And the same you had mentioned. Typically, when you see commercial drivers in the news, it's not necessarily good news. From an AMTA lens, I think that's why it's important we have events like our driver appreciation.
Yes,
We're telling
love that.
drivers how we appreciate them. The goods on our shelves, we don't get those unless a driver brings them, right? This past weekend,
Yeah,
we had our professional truck driving championship. Being able
I
to
heard. Yeah,
yes, you'll have to come next year. Always
I
need
would
more
love to.
volunteers.
I would love
Um,
to.
but being literally boots on the ground with the drivers, interacting with them, interacting with their families, getting to know them year after year, I think it's just so important from that mental perspective that they feel seen. Everyone feels seen with the work they do and the importance of the work that they do. So I think that's just huge with the work that you're doing.
Well, and likewise, I think you exude that as an association. I'm not just saying that, like, I use you as an example, but
Yeah.
um, I mean, we've worked together a few times and I've been on the podcast. Like, I know
Mm-hmm.
kind of the spirit of why you do steering change and why you promote, positive stories and community and everything. Like, it all adds up. It matters so much. So you're really setting a good bar, and I think it's commendable and appreciated, I'm sure.
Thank you. And likewise. So, I mean, taking all that, we see it. We hear about mental health on the news. We hear about it on social media. What misconceptions do employers still have about mental health and safety at work?
I am going to answer this with an anecdote, a story.
Bring it on.
So the last shop that I worked at, and I have a ton of respect for this guy. I worked for him for 6 years. He was a self-made businessman, the best machinist I've ever worked with, but really not the safest employer to come to when the going got tough. So oil and gas, it's up and down, boom and bust. When it's going good, you're great, but you hit a threshold where you're either going to burn out or it's just going to be a lot, whatever it may be, you're being challenged. And I remember we finished this rush job. We worked all weekend. I think it was like 10 days straight. The four of us worked. We got it done. It was perfect. It was tough material. It was really challenging. That's why my hair looks like the before picture on a box of Just for Men. It was stressful, man. And I remember it was like 1 or 2 in the afternoon. And, I kind of leaned back on my bench and I was just like taking a breath. And I could feel that like I was done. Like mentally, physically, I was done. And I turned to him and I said, I think I want to take off early. Like we got it done. I'm happy. And his it wasn't the most positive reaction. And he kind of got upset. He's like, I can't believe you're checking out. We still got more work to do. And I rarely ever said something like this, but I hit the point where I had to. And I was just like, man, like, I don't think you understand. Like, I'm not, I'm not just saying like, I don't want to work anymore. Like I physically and mentally can't.
Mm-hmm.
And all of this has to do with math and physics. Like I can't. And he just couldn't see past the words that I was saying and not like why I was saying, like, it was rare. It was a rare occurrence. So I think that misconception that, when you're having a mentally tough day, I'm a business owner. I'm an employer, and there's a sense of like, I really wish my employees could, once they clock in, they're here, they're present. Like I need them, and I want them to have purpose and perform well. But you have to understand that like it's iterative, and there's some days where you put pants on and you're like, I could crush it today all day, and there's some days you're like, I hope I put pants on. So it's I think that's the biggest misconception, is that even the ones who plow through and they're steady Eddie, they're going to have tough days, and they are allowed to have a day where it's like, I'm not feeling the best, maybe I'm not okay, I'm too tired to run a truck or run a machine. So yeah.
And I think what you're talking about when you touch on that is something to the broader kind of workplace culture that we are starting to see. Well, maybe I will pose it to you as a question. Are we starting to see a shift to workplaces that are more supportive of that psychological culture as well as just a general work culture?
100%. It's awesome. And it's not, let me put it this way. It's not like I go out there and I'm like, you should, care about your employees more. You should, give them more paid time off like that. I'd never use the word should, or you have to. But I think what employers are realizing is like, there's something in it for you. There's a lot of benefits to learning more about how to manage, an employee's psychological health and your workplace culture. The biggest, I was just training a leadership group a couple of weeks ago. They said the number one reason for short-term disability leave is a mental health leave. And they brought me in. They're like, we also care about our employees, but if this can help us save some time off and save some money too, like, of course that's a benefit we'll enjoy. Like, the people matter the most, we want to help them, but there's all these different tangent benefits that I think a lot of employers are going, okay, this is helping me in a lot of different areas. I'm keeping employees longer, like good ones, because I can give them a break. We've built in systems, where they go on vacation and everyone's picking up the slack while they're gone. They're not just coming back to a wall at work. So those cultural shifts I'm seeing lots of, and I would love to be out of work in another 5 years and move on to something else, because everybody's like, you know what, we get it. It's important, and it's helping everybody.
Awesome. Something to dream about.
Yeah,
So I'm a
dreamer.
Love that about you. I'm going to shift gears a little bit. We were, as mentioned in our intro, we were fortunate to have you at our Medicine Hat Safety Summit back in May. You've touched a bit on what we've discussed today. We get to see you again for our friends in Whitecourt in the north at the Whitecourt Safety Summit on September 30th. But can you tell us a bit about what you'll be covering at that Safety Summit in September?
I'm very excited. It's a privilege. I had so much fun in Medicine Hat, and it was a great group. And it's a privilege to do what I do. I don't say that lightly. So, a lot of what you've heard, even on this podcast, there's so much more to expand on. And really, I like to talk about like what it looks like practically.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a hands-on trades guy. So I can speak at a high level and talk about cultural change and all this stuff, but it's like, what does that conversation look like between, an employer and an employee? Or what does it look like to come back after, 14-hour drive and debrief or unload? Or, what does rest look like practically? That's kind of the nuts and bolts, the guts of it that I really like to get into. Also, I like to think I'm a pretty funny guy. Mental health doesn't have to be heavy.
I can
I don't
vouch.
like
You're
to say
good.
thanks. You're so kind to laugh at a few of my jokes. But it doesn't all have to be heavy. I do
Mm-hmm.
mental health stand-up comedy sometimes, and most of the time it goes over really well. But there's so many different ways to come at the psychological safety, mental health conversation. It doesn't all have to be for you. I don't have to be everybody's favorite burger on the menu.
Mm-hmm.
But there is something that will resonate with you. I'm really intentional about putting as much out there as I can. So whatever sticks, whatever resonates, that's what you take. And the thing I loved about the Medicine Hat Summit is that it really prompted a lot of good conversations.
Mm-hmm.
So beyond the presentation, I spent a lot of time afterwards having real like heart-to-heart conversations with people I just met, and that is such a gift. Like it's practice, right? So you
Mm-hmm.
practice sussing it out, explaining what's going on, and I do that on stage too. Like I'll go first. I don't. It's not as polished as Tony Robbins or something. It's I build these talks for you, and like I've worked with AMTA, and we do
Mm-hmm.
a lot of discovery to make sure that it's not just high level stuff. It's your industry. It's for you. I'm just the catalyst. I'm just there to give it to you.
Awesome. And you spoke to practice and practicality. I don't think an approach to mental health necessarily needs to be this giant leap. I think it can be kind of a baby step process. So, say you're someone struggling, whether you're an employer who's witnessing it or you're an employee who is feeling it. Do you have first steps or resources that you recommend when you're kind of first exploring that journey?
Yes, and really good question, because it's not a big leap. Growing up, honestly, there were songs that I found myself listening to, on good days, on bad days, and I'd listen to one of my favorite singer, Pearl Jam or whatever, and I resonate with what they're saying and how they're saying it. I'm like, I kind of feel that way. So that was like my first introduction to maybe a few words or like
Mm-hmm.
the spirit of what I'm feeling. I'm like, okay, that I kind of get that. And it just took people in my circle. It wasn't always my best friends. It was just somebody that, it comes up and you just feel safe enough to kind of talk something out like a little bit and just try it out. Not everybody is like the perfect person for a deep conversation. Not everybody can support you in a moment. But it's nice to kind of do inventory and at the same time let other people know that you're there for them too. That's a really great prompt. My old bass player is one of my best friends. He's the only guy that calls me out of the blue just to shoot the, you know what?
Yep.
And he's that guy. I don't talk to him about everything, but he's that guy that you can just kind of be real with. So just identifying who's around you that you're like, yeah, you're pretty chill. Like, you kind of get it. And it's just practice. You don't have to apologize for not using the right words or not knowing how to explain something. And if you're, trying to support somebody that you care about, all you have to remember is we and let's. So you don't have to be the resource. You just take them there. and don't let them go until you figure it out. So somebody tells you a heavy story or they're going through something, you're like, I don't know what that's like, but I do know what it's like to feel totally abandoned or to feel like your life's all in uproar. You meet them kind of at those big feelings and you go, look, let's go figure it out together. Let's call a hotline, or we should go talk to so-and-so, and you just go from there, because you're going to learn along the way. They're going to have the support they need until you have that handoff. And if it's healthy, helpful, and heals you, it's therapy. It's got to check all three, though. Everything in moderation. We all need to cope, but just make sure that, it's healthy, helpful, and it's serving you. Anything could be support. So I love to play guitar. I like to get outside. I like to, have a glass of wine once in a while too, but it's whatever works for you, whatever heals you.
There, we can have a glass of wine next time I see you in person. Totally down with that one.
I accept these terms, yes.
So, Kris, tell me
Scotch. I like Scotch.
Absolutely. As long as we have a driver. Let's push that one out there. Fantastic.
A sober one, yeah.
Or bicycles. Where and how can we learn more about Vive?
Well, you can go to our website, vivementalhealth.com. It's just vivmentalhealth.com.
Awesome.
We're all over socials, for better or for worse. I run all our social media too. But it's a great way to get little snips of like what we're up to and where we're going to be. And that's just at Vive Mental Health. If you're in Edmonton, we're hosting our 5-year anniversary on June 13th. I'm not sure when this podcast is going to come out, but
it'll be out before then. You're good.
If it's before then, just go on Eventbrite and search VIV Mental Health. The event's called Revival, and it's just a celebration of not me. I don't like to make it about me, but everybody who's supported me and Vive, because it was a big career shift, and I am very indebted to the people who believed in me, gave me opportunities, shared a lot of wisdom, kind of stuck by me while I was figuring it out. And it's my chance to celebrate you. And I'm playing my first acoustic set in like 4 years. So
all right,
you'll hear the new song, and I just want to spoil my people. So I'm very grateful.
Fantastic. And really, congratulations on the work that you do, and the people that you affect. I think that's super huge.
Thank you.
As always a pleasure working with you, talking to you. Always feel a little better for it. I'm going to start closing down and just end with one final question. Is there anything you would like to add on our chat for today?
If no one's told you lately, I'm proud of you. I don't think we hear that enough. And
damn, Kris.
Truly, I don't have to know you to care about you. If you're listening to this, like, I know you got up today and tried your best, and like, I'm impressed. So it's crazy times. The world is a little bit wild and uncertain, but it's cool that you have a forum like this to have conversations, to let a guy like me let the Albertan out the side of my mouth and talk it out with you. So I just appreciate it. But keep going. If it gets heavy, there's somebody who cares about you. Let them know. They can't wait to help you.
Huge message for our listeners. Kris, I really appreciate your knowledge and insight, and thank you so much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me and for having this podcast. It's awesome. Good job.
We'll see you in September.
Sounds good.
All right, let's close with some news. Thank you to everyone who's coming out to our Calgary Golf Tournament. That is fully sold out, and we anticipate Edmonton doing the same, so we will see you there at the links at Spruce Grove. We will have some dates for you on our Driver Appreciation Days in September coming up right quick. And please do note and save the date for our 2026 Drawdown Dinner that's taking place October 15th at the River Cree Event Centre in Enoch, Alberta. Do you have any questions or comments about the Steering Change episodes, particularly today's? Do reach out on our Instagram at AMTA_CA or LinkedIn and Facebook at Alberta Motor Transport Association. Stay safe and see you next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of AMTA's Steering Change podcast. The views expressed by guests of the Steering Change podcast are their own and may not reflect the views of AMTA, its hosts, or sponsors. Did you have a question that you would like answered on an upcoming episode of the Steering Change podcast? We want to hear from you. To submit a question to the Steering Change mailbag, hit up our DMs on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram with the hashtag Steering Change, and your question will be answered either live on the podcast or by one of our SMEs here at AMTA. We ask that you share this episode with those in your network that could benefit from what we discussed today, and make sure to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform so you can be notified when future episodes are released. You can learn more about us and our mission by visiting www.amta.ca. Now get out there and have a safe day.